Hey guys, it's Chris. From pilots going too big in their maneuvers to losing control of aircraft, here are 10 times when air shows went wrong. Number 10. Flugtag 88. This tale of an air show disaster happened in 1988 in West Germany at Ramstein Air Force Base. The Italian Air Force was hired to do a special show for over 300,000 people, but little did they know what was about to happen. One of the maneuvers that the pilots of the Air Force was going to do was a highly coordinated bit where a majority of the pilots were going to go and make a heart shape with their aircraft. Then the last remaining one was going to go and pierce the heart through the gap to create quite the visual. The problem though was that despite having practiced this move before, the piercing craft went and collided with two craft who formed the bottom of the heart. Sadly, this caused a massive accident that disintegrated one plane and severely damaged the others. The plane that pierced the heart then actually went and crashed into the nearby runway, which just so happened to be filled with people due to the nature of the show, and then it was turned into a fireball. Another jet went and hit a nearby emergency fireball that caused its pilot to perish. The problems didn't end there though, as emergency help was hindered due to a lack of coordination and determination to get everyone out as quickly as possible. There were multiple countries involved, but the US, who owned the base, refused to let other medical teams who were closer go and tend to the wounded. In the end, 70 people died from the event, making it the second deadliest air show in history. 346 members of the crowd were also injured by the event. I don't know about you, but hearing about events like this kind of makes me skeptical of going to air shows in person. Number 9. Reno Air Races Crash 2011. Of course, the tragedies don't stop there. In Nevada, there was the Reno Air Races crash that happened less than a decade ago in 2011. The main cause of this accident was pilot James Leeward, who went and flew a highly customized P-51 Mustang, a very classic aviation machine for those who know their aircrafts. Leeward was 74 at the time, but despite his age, his skill led him to being in third place during the races. However, after clearing a certain pylon, something went horribly wrong. His craft pitched up and then just as suddenly went into a nosedive that would lead to him crashing into the parking ramp nearby at about 400 miles per hour. The crash killed Leeward, but the parking ramp he crashed into was one with box seating, and as such, 7 people watching were killed as well. 4 people also died after succumbing to their injuries. About 70 other people were injured as well. But why was the crash a thing at all when clearly Leeward was an experienced pilot? The answer to that is that his customized P-51 had some internal issues. One that made it so Leeward experienced 17 Gs, that's gravitational forces, and it knocked him out as he cleared that pylon, which is why he nosedived to his doom. Number 8. Paris Air Show Tu-144 crash. What makes this particular airshow crash so odd is that the plane in question, the Tu-144, wasn't a special aircraft meant for airshows. Rather, it was a Russian passenger liner. It was Soviet-made, and it was a model that was in their airways until 1999, which clearly meant it could do its job. So how could this passenger liner get into an air show and then crash? That would be because of competition. Recall that 1973 was smack dab in the middle of the Cold War, and the Russians wanted to prove that their aircraft was better than the Concorde that was made by the British and the French. The Russian pilot in control of the Tu-144 was determined to beat the Concorde at all costs and prove their craft's superiority, which led to their undoing. Their hubris led to them having an incident while coming in for a landing, as the craft was coming in too hot, and despite trying to pull up, the craft started to break up, crashed, wrecked multiple houses, and it killed its entire crew, as well as certain other people who were caught in the accident. Multiple theories have been put out as to why the craft went down like it did, including theories about pushing the craft too hard, as well as a spy plane forcing the aircraft to do evasive tactics which led to its crashing. What about you? Have you ever been to an air show? Did you think of it as a risky venture? Would you still want to go to one learning about these incidents? Let me know your opinions in the comments below. Also, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. There are lots more awesome videos coming out all the time. Number 7. 2007 Blue Angels crash. There are all sorts of piloting groups out there that have name recognition, and in the United States, the Blue Angels are revered to be the best of the best in many aspects. That makes the crash that happened in South Carolina back in 2007 all the more curious and tragic. Just as tragic, though, is that the crash in question happened at the very end of a successful show for a crowd of people. The aircraft with pilot Kevin Kojak Davis crashed, and he was the sole fatality in the incident. Of course, there were other people injured and there was a lot of property damage. But you might be thinking, this is a Blue Angel. What caused a trained pilot like him to crash? And the answer to that is G-force. A standard person is able to resist about 5 Gs, and that's 5 times Earth's gravity pressing down on your body. It's a lot of weight. After coming out of a steep turn, Davis was pulling around 7 Gs, which was enough to make him pass out. It's true that with enough training and quick reaction time, you can withstand that much, but Kevin Davis was not able to, and thus he fell unconscious and then he crashed. Number 6. Transpo 72 crash. Joe Howard was the pilot who was involved in this crash. He was part of the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds, another very well-known and very well-respected group of pilots. However, at an air show in Washington, things went wrong. While doing a maneuver, the plane suddenly lost power. This happened while Joe Howard was 2,500 feet above the ground, and thus he plummeted and crashed without being able to pull up to try and save the plane. However, he was able to eject from the craft. Sadly, that's where his luck ended. Even after ejecting from the craft, the winds that day made it to where his parachute was pushed towards the fireball of the crash. As he got closer, the parachute melted from the intense heat, and as a result, he fell from the sky 200 feet above the ground, ending his life. What makes this particular death even more tragic is that Joe Howard was a veteran pilot of wars, including Vietnam, and yet he died in a freak accident at an air show. Number 5. 2015 Shoreham Air Show crash. In August 2015, a pilot was attempting to do a special aerial maneuver at an air show in Shoreham, but things went wrong and he crashed instead. One of the problems of the maneuver was the height at which the pilot started the attempt. Of course, it was hugely risky in that he was 200 feet above the ground when he attempted it, but that meant there was literally no room for error. Because if one small error did occur, the plane would definitely crash. In a more typical use of this maneuver, it would have been done so that at the peak of the loop, the plane would have been around 4,000 feet above the ground. But when the pilot did it, he was only 2,700 feet at its peak, which many agreed wasn't enough to realistically pull off the move safely. When the plane crashed down, it exploded into multiple pieces and wrecked many nearby cars. 11 lives were claimed by this accident, though the pilot was able to eject and go to safety. Though it should be noted he sustained heavy injuries. His woes didn't end there though, as he was charged with 11 counts of manslaughter due to the crash being attributed to pilot error. However, he was acquitted in 2019. Number 4. Golden West Sport Aviation Air Show crash. Arguably one of the deadliest air show crashes happened in 1972 in Sacramento, California, at the Golden West Sport Aviation Air Show. This crash involved an F-86 Sabre, which is a single-engine jet fighter and was constructed to be used in the Royal Canadian Air Force. While reliable in certain ways, there was one key flaw that would be catastrophic on this day, as the craft was known to not always get enough altitude upon liftoff. This is what happened in Sacramento that day at the air show. Because the plane couldn't even take off before it crashed into a chain-link fence. It caused the fuel tanks on the jet to explode, and as a result of that, the plane hurled forward as a massive fireball. This led to the plane hitting a car with 2 people and killing them. But it didn't stop there, it kept going and hit a nearby ice cream parlor. 22 people died and another 28 were injured. But the story doesn't even end there though. The pilot who did get out of the plane before things went fully wrong was found to have been the cause of the accident due to inexperience. He had only logged 4 hours in the Sabre before doing the air show, thus meaning he didn't fully understand the issues with the craft. Inexperienced pilots are always a danger, especially when in overpowered aircraft like fighter jets. Number 3. Biggin Hill, 1977. At the annual air show at Biggin Hill back in 1977, things were going as smoothly as one could hope. Folks were so confident in their safety that a helicopter was flying people around the airfield to give them a better look at the place. But in the course of doing that, the helicopter went and hit a biplane that was flying around and sheared off the landing gear of the plane while sending the helicopter into a spiral. The helicopter would crash and sadly kill 5 people. The biplane, meanwhile, was able to crash land without major injuries to the pilot, though the incident is still remembered because of just how quickly things went wrong, and how it could have been prevented had both pilots been more aware of their surroundings. Nowadays, there are more advanced pieces of technology in planes to make tragedies like this extremely rare. Number 2. 1952 Farnborough Airshow Crash. This event in the United Kingdom is still discussed as one of the deadliest airshow crashes of its kind. A prototype jet fighter was engaged in an aerial maneuver, one where the plane dove and then rose high to the air at 40,000 feet before returning to the crowded area. However, as it went to make another rise in height, the plane disintegrated, causing the plane parts to shoot out near the crowd and the cockpit with both pilots to crash to the ground. The engines of the jet were ripped off and were flung towards the crowd. One hit the crowd and caused nearly 30 deaths on its own. The crew of the plane didn't survive. It was later determined that a structural failure in the fighter, which was again a prototype, was the cause of the crash. Number 1. Skinilov Airshow Disaster. On July 27, 2002, an airshow in the Ukraine would become the deadliest airshow incident in history. A jet fighter was performing a move at low altitude, and the result of that was the jet's wing hitting the ground and causing the crash to happen. While the pilots were able to get out, the plane went and hit a nearby aircraft, and that caused the plane to further cartwheel and shoot towards a crowded area. This resulted in the deaths of 77 people, and over 100 others were hospitalized. The crew was held responsible for the crash due to them doing moves they weren't prepared for and not heeding the aircraft's workings. They served 14 and 8 years in jail, respectively. It seems like air shows are places where hot-headed pilots may end up attempting maneuvers they aren't truly ready to execute. And the results are devastating if an error does occur. Thanks for watching. Can you believe some of these things happened? Did you think maybe these kinds of shows were foolproof in terms of what went on there? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe to World List, and I'll see you next time on the channel.